My son looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Dad, you're 74 years old. You have no business being behind the wheel anymore. It's for your own safety." What he didn't know was that I'd already found the contract. The one he signed with Shady Pines Assisted Living. The one that listed my house as collateral. The one dated 3 weeks before this conversation. My name is Robert Harrison. I built Harrison Construction from nothing. 47 years in business. 340 employees at our peak. $12 million in annual revenue before I sold it. And my son thought I was too old to drive. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're listening from today. The morning started like any other Tuesday in late September. I was sitting on my back porch in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching the sun come up over the mountains, coffee in hand, newspaper on my lap. The kind of peaceful morning I'd earned after 5 decades of 5 a.m. wake-up calls and 14-hour workdays. My wife Dorothy passed 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and brutal. One day she was planting tomatoes in our garden. The next she was in hospice. 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. After she died, I simplified my life. Sold the big house in Paradise Valley. Bought this smaller place in North Scottsdale. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, mountain views. Paid cash. $780,000. I didn't need much anymore. Just my morning coffee, my afternoon walks, my weekly poker game with the guys from the old Rotary Club, and my truck. A 2019 Ford F-150. Navy blue. Leather seats. I'd bought it the year Dorothy got sick because she said the old one made her back hurt. That truck was freedom. Independence. Proof that I could still take care of myself. My son Kevin had other ideas. Kevin pulled into my driveway around 9 that morning. No phone call first. No text. Just showed up in his BMW, wearing his expensive suit, checking his phone before he even got out of the car. He's 48 years old. Works in commercial real estate. Makes good money, though you'd never know it from how he's always asking for more. His wife Linda stays home with their 2 kids, but they have a housekeeper, a landscaper, and a pool service. 4 vacations a year. Private school tuition. The whole suburban dream, financed on credit and expectations. Expectations of what? Of me. Of my money. Of the inheritance they've already spent in their heads. Dad. Kevin walked onto the porch without being invited. Sat in Dorothy's chair without asking. "We need to talk." "Good morning to you too, Kevin." He ignored the hint. "I've been thinking about your situation." My situation. There was that phrase. The same one his sister Rebecca had used last month when she suggested I might be more comfortable in a retirement community. What situation is that? "Dad, you're 74 years old. Living alone. Driving yourself around town." He leaned forward, practiced concern on his face. "It's not safe anymore. I've been driving for 58 years, Kevin. Never had an accident. Never got a ticket. That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He pulled out his phone, scrolled to something. "I've been doing research. Drivers over 70 have significantly higher accident rates, slower reaction times, vision problems, cognitive decline. Cognitive decline. My son was sitting in my house, in my wife's chair, telling me my brain was failing. My last eye exam was 6 months ago. 20/25 vision. My doctor says I'm in excellent health for my age. My reaction times are fine. Dad, you don't know what you don't know. That's the whole problem with cognitive decline. You can't see it in yourself." I set down my coffee cup, looked at my son, really looked at him. Kevin had my father's jawline but his mother's eyes. When he was young, those eyes were curious, eager to learn. Now they calculated, measured, assessed value. "Kevin, why are you really here?" "I told you. I'm worried about your safety." And he shifted in his seat. "And I think it's time to make some changes. For your own good." "What kind of changes?" "Well, for starters, you should stop driving. I can arrange transportation for you. Uber, Lyft, whatever you need. We can set up an account." "I don't want an Uber account. I have a truck." "The truck is part of the problem, Dad. A full-size pickup? At your age? You can barely see over the steering wheel. I'm 5 feet 10 inches. The truck has adjustable seats. But facts didn't matter to Kevin. He'd already written his narrative. What else? I asked, keeping my voice calm. What do you mean? You said, for starters. That implies there's more. What else have you decided about my life? Kevin's expression flickered. Just for a moment. The mask slipping. I think we should discuss your living situation. I live here. In my house. That I own. Dad, this house is too much for you. The maintenance, the yard work, the cleaning. You're overwhelmed. I looked around my spotless living room. The yard I'd mowed 2 days ago. The house I maintained with the same discipline I'd applied to running a construction company for 47 years. I'm not overwhelmed. You don't see it because you're too close to it. But Linda and I have noticed things. The house isn't as clean as it used to be. The yard looks neglected. You're slipping, Dad, and it's okay. It happens to everyone eventually. Linda, his wife, the woman who'd visited my house exactly twice in the past year, both times for less than an hour. She'd noticed things. What do you suggest? I kept my voice neutral, curious. The voice I used in negotiations when I wanted the other party to reveal their full hand before I showed mine. There are some really nice communities for people in your situation. Assisted living, but not like a nursing home. More like a resort. Activities, dining, social events. You'd have your own apartment, and you wouldn't have to worry about cooking or cleaning or driving anywhere. Assisted living. My son wanted to put me in a home. And the house. Well, we'd sell it, obviously. Use the proceeds to pay for your care. There it was. The real agenda, finally visible. I see. Dad, this isn't about the money. It's about your quality of life. Of course. I've already looked into a few places. There's one called Shady Pines that's supposed to be excellent. Beautiful facility. Great reviews. They have an opening in their memory care unit. Memory care. He wasn't just suggesting assisted living. He was suggesting I had dementia. Memory care. I repeated. It's just a precaution. They have different levels of care. You'd probably start in independent living, but if things progress, you'd already be in the system. If things progress. As if my mental decline was inevitable. Already happening. Just a matter of time. Kevin, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not interested in moving. His face tightened. Dad, this isn't really your decision anymore. Excuse me? I mean, he caught himself. Recalibrated. I mean, we're your family. We have a responsibility to make sure you're safe. Even if you don't agree with our assessment. And if I refuse, then we'll have to explore other options. What other options? Kevin stood up, checked his phone. I have a meeting, but think about what I said. We can talk more this weekend. I'll bring some brochures from Shady Pines. He left without saying goodbye. Didn't even close the front door behind him. I sat in my chair for a long time after he left. The coffee had gone cold. The newspaper sat unread. The mountains were still beautiful, but I wasn't seeing them anymore. My son had just told me I was losing my mind, that I couldn't be trusted to drive, that I needed to sell my house and move into memory care. And he'd said it wasn't really my decision anymore. I'd built a $12 million company through careful observation and strategic patience. I'd negotiated contracts with developers, unions, suppliers, and government agencies. I'd survived recessions, market crashes, and every kind of business challenge you could imagine. My son thought I'd lost my edge. He was about to find out how wrong he was. Wednesday morning, I started investigating. The conversation with Kevin had bothered me all night. Not just what he'd said, but how he'd said it. The rehearsed quality of his concern. The specific details he'd researched. The mention of Shady Pines by name. This wasn't a spontaneous intervention. This was planned. I drove my truck, the one I was supposedly too old to operate, to my bank. First Arizona Federal. I'd been banking there for 35 years. The manager, Patricia Delgado, came out personally when she saw me. Mr. Harrison, what brings you in today? Patricia, I need to review my accounts. All of them. And I need to know if anyone else has been asking about them. Her smile faltered slightly. Of course. Let me pull up your information. We went to her office. She typed on her computer while I waited. Everything looks normal with your accounts, Mr. Harrison. Checking, savings, the money market. No unusual activity. Has anyone been asking about my accounts? Requesting information? Trying to add themselves as signatories? Patricia hesitated. Mr. Harrison, I'm not sure I should. Patricia, I'm 74 years old. My son just suggested I have dementia and need to move into memory care. If someone's been sniffing around my finances, I need to know. She looked at me for a long moment. Whatever she saw in my eyes must have convinced her. Your son Kevin was here 2 weeks ago. He asked about the process for adding himself to your accounts. For convenience, he said, in case you needed help managing things. And what did you tell him? That you'd need to be present and give written consent. He seemed disappointed. I nodded slowly. Anything else? He asked about power of attorney. Whether he'd be able to access your accounts if you became incapacitated. Incapacitated. The word landed like a punch. Thank you, Patricia. One more thing. Can you put a flag on my accounts? I want to be notified immediately if anyone tries to access them or make changes without my direct authorization. Absolutely, Mr. Harrison. I'll set that up right now. I left the bank with a clear picture forming. Kevin wasn't just concerned about my driving. He was laying groundwork for something bigger. My next stop was my lawyer's office. Martin Chun had handled my legal affairs since I sold Harrison Construction 8 years ago. Estate planning, tax issues, the occasional contract review. He knew my business, my family, and my finances. Robert, come in. Martin shook my hand warmly. It's been too long. How are you? I've been better, Martin. I need your help with something. I explained Kevin's visit. The conversation about driving. The mention of assisted living and memory care. What Patricia had told me at the bank. Martin's expression grew more serious with each detail. Robert, has Kevin ever mentioned anything about power of attorney to you directly? Never. But according to my banker, he's been asking questions about it. Martin turned to his computer, typed for a moment, frowned. Robert, I need to show you something. And I need you to stay calm. He turned the monitor toward me. On the screen was a document. Formal legal language. Shady Pines Assisted Living at the top. My name in the middle. Admission agreement for Robert Harrison. I leaned closer, reading carefully. The document outlined terms for my residency at Shady Pines. Monthly fees of $8,500. Services provided. Rules and regulations. But the part that stopped my heart was at the bottom. Collateral property. 4847 Desert Vista Lane, Scottsdale, AZ.my house. Listed as collateral. Guarantor signature. Kevin Harrison. Signed 3 weeks ago. I stared at the screen. The words blurred and sharpened. Blurred again. How did you get this? My voice sounded far away. Kevin contacted Shady Pines using my firm's name. He claimed to be acting on your behalf with my authorization. The facility reached out to verify, and I intercepted the request yesterday. I was planning to call you today. He forged your authorization. He misrepresented our involvement, which is fraud, Robert. This entire document is fraudulent. You didn't sign it. I didn't authorize it. Kevin had no legal right to commit you to anything. I sat back in my chair. The leather creaked. The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. My son had signed a contract to put me in a memory care facility. He'd used my house as collateral. He'd forged connections to my lawyer. And he'd done it 3 weeks before telling me I was too old to drive. What are my options, Martin? Legally? Several. This is fraud. We can report him to the police. We can sue. We can file complaints with the state bar if he used any legal pretenses. And personally, Martin looked at me with something like respect. Personally, I'd recommend you protect your assets immediately, then decide how you want to handle your son. What about the contract he signed? Invalid. Completely unenforceable. You never agreed to it. Kevin has no legal authority over your affairs. Shady Pines will need to void the entire arrangement once they understand the situation. What if Kevin claims I'm incompetent? That I can't make decisions for myself? Then he'd need a court to declare you incompetent, which requires medical evaluations, legal proceedings, evidence. It's a high bar, Robert. And based on our conversation today, you're clearly competent. Sharp, in fact. Sharper than most people half your age. I nodded slowly. Martin, I want to restructure my estate. Today, if possible. What do you have in mind? I want everything protected. The house, the investments, the savings. I want it in a trust that Kevin can't touch. And I want to change my will. Martin pulled out a legal pad. Tell me what you want. For the next 2 hours, we worked through the details. The Robert Harrison Irrevocable Trust. Professional trustees. Specific distributions. Charitable donations. When we finished, Martin looked at the final document. Robert, this effectively disinherits Kevin entirely. He'll receive the minimum required by Arizona law. Nothing more. I know. And you're certain about this. I thought about the forged contract, the questions about power of attorney, the plan to sell my house and put me in memory care. I'm certain. What about your daughter? Rebecca? That was a good question. Rebecca was 45, lived in Portland, worked as a nurse. She'd visited more than Kevin over the past 3 years, but she'd also started making comments recently about my age, about living alone, about whether I should simplify my life. I need to find out if she's involved in this. And if she is, then she gets the same treatment as Kevin. Martin nodded. I'll have the trust documents ready by Friday. In the meantime, I'm going to contact Shady Pines directly and inform them that Kevin's contract is fraudulent. They'll need to void it immediately. Thank you, Martin. I shook his hand and headed for the door. Then I stopped. Martin, one more thing. I want a cognitive evaluation. Formal. Medical. Something that proves definitively that I'm mentally competent. That's actually an excellent idea. It creates documentation that undermines any future claims Kevin might make. Set it up. As soon as possible. I left the lawyer's office with a folder of preliminary documents and a fire in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. My son had underestimated me. He'd seen an old man and assumed weakness. He'd seen grief and assumed vulnerability. He'd seen a quiet life and assumed decline. He was about to learn that quiet doesn't mean defeated, and old doesn't mean helpless. Thursday morning, I called Rebecca. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. Dad? Is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just calling to chat. How are the kids? We made small talk for a few minutes. Her job at the hospital, the kids' activities, the Portland rain. Then I steered the conversation. Rebecca, have you talked to Kevin lately? A pause. Just slightly too long. Not really. Why? He came by Tuesday. Had some concerns about me. What kind of concerns? He thinks I'm too old to drive. Suggested I should move into an assisted living facility. Another pause. I could hear her breathing change. Dad, I know Kevin can be intense, but he's just worried about you. Did you know he was going to talk to me about this? Silence. Rebecca? Dad, we've all been worried. You're living alone. Mom's been gone for 3 years. We just want to make sure you're okay. Did you know about Shady Pines? The question hung in the air like smoke. What do you mean? Her voice was different now. Careful. Kevin signed a contract with Shady Pines Assisted Living 3 weeks ago, using my house as collateral, without my knowledge or consent. Dad, I'm sure there's an explanation. Did you know Rebecca? Long silence. I could hear traffic in the background. She was outside somewhere. Walking. He mentioned he was looking into options. That's all. He said he was going to talk to you first. He signed the contract 3 weeks before he talked to me. I didn't know that. But you knew he was making plans about my future without involving me. Dad, that's not fair. Were you part of the discussion about selling my house? Another pause. This one told me everything. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you one question. and I need you to tell me the truth. Were you and Kevin planning to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of my assets? Dad. She sounded genuinely shocked, or genuinely good at sounding shocked. That's insane. We would never. Then why is Kevin researching power of attorney? Why is he asking my bank about accessing my accounts? Why did he sign a contract for memory care 3 weeks before mentioning it to me? Silence. Just breathing. Dad, I think you're overreacting. Kevin was he was trying to help. Maybe he went about it the wrong way, but his intentions were good. His intentions were to put me in a home and sell my property. That's not. I've seen the contract, Rebecca. I've talked to my lawyer. I know exactly what Kevin was planning. Her voice changed again. Harder now. The mask slipping. Fine. You want the truth? We're worried about you. You're 74 years old. Living alone. Rattling around in that house like a ghost. You barely call. You never visit. When's the last time you saw your grandchildren? When's the last time you brought them to see me? That's not the point. When's the last time you called me, Rebecca? Not because you needed something. Not because Kevin asked you to. Just to talk. Silence again. I thought so. Dad, you're being paranoid. This is exactly what we were afraid of. You're not thinking clearly anymore. I laughed. Actually laughed. Rebecca, I've never thought more clearly in my life. I just got off the phone with my cognitive evaluation results. Perfect scores. My doctor says I'm as sharp as someone 20 years younger. Those tests don't measure everything. They measure enough. Enough to prove that I'm competent. Enough to prove that Kevin's contract is fraudulent. Enough to stand up in any court if either of you tries to challenge my decisions. What decisions? The decisions I'm making about my estate, about my assets, about who gets what when I'm gone. Long pause. I could almost hear her calculating. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying that I've spent the last 2 days with my lawyer, restructuring everything. The house, the investments, the savings. It's all protected now. In a trust that neither you nor Kevin can touch. You can't do that. I already did. That's not fair. We're your children. We have rights. You have the rights I choose to give you. And after what Kevin did, what both of you apparently knew about, I'm choosing to give you very little. Dad, please, let's talk about this. I'll fly down this weekend. We can sit down as a family. The family discussion should have happened before Kevin signed that contract. Before you two started planning my future without my consent. Before you decided that my age meant I couldn't make my own decisions. That's not what. Goodbye, Rebecca. I hung up. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear or uncertainty. From anger. Both of my children. Both of them had been involved in this. Planning. Scheming. Treating me like a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. I looked around my living room. Dorothy's photo on the mantle. Our wedding picture. Family portraits from when the kids were young, before they grew up and started seeing me as a resource instead of a father. I picked up my phone again and called Martin Chun. Martin, it's Robert. I need you to add Rebecca to the trust modifications. Same terms as Kevin. Minimum required by law. Nothing more. Are you certain? I'm certain. I'll have the updated documents ready this afternoon. I hung up and walked outside to my truck. My navy blue F-150, the one I was supposedly too old to drive. I climbed in, started the engine, and drove to the grocery store. Then to the hardware store. Then to the park where I walked 2 miles, the same walk I'd done every day for the past 3 years. AT-74. I was in better shape than most 50-year-olds. My mind was sharp. My body was strong. My life was my OWN. My children had forgotten that. They were about to be reminded. Saturday morning, they came together. I saw Kevin's BMW first, pulling into the driveway. Rebecca's rental car followed. They'd coordinated. United front. I watched them from my kitchen window. They stood beside their cars for a moment, talking, gesturing, planning their approach. Rebecca's flight from Portland meant they'd discussed this extensively. Probably all day Friday. I made coffee and waited. The doorbell rang. I took my time answering. They stood on my porch like salespeople. Kevin in his weekend casual $200 jeans, designer polo. Rebecca in what she probably thought was a comforting outfit. Soft colors, warm smile. Dad. Kevin's voice was measured, practiced. Can we come in? I stepped aside. Let them enter. Closed the door behind them. They sat on my couch. I remained standing. Dad, we need to talk about what's been happening. Rebecca started. Good cop first. There's been some misunderstandings, and we want to clear the air. Go ahead. Kevin leaned forward. Dad, I know you're upset about the Shady Pines situation, but you have to understand, I was just exploring options. That contract wasn't final. It was a placeholder while we figured out the best approach. A placeholder that used my house as collateral without my knowledge or consent. That was a formality. I was going to discuss it with you before anything was finalized. You discussed it with me on Tuesday, 3 weeks after you signed the contract. Kevin's jaw tightened. Dad, you're focusing on the wrong things. The point is that we're worried about you. Living alone. Driving at your age. It's not safe. According to who? According to statistics. According to common sense. According to my doctor, I'm in excellent health. According to my cognitive evaluation, I'm mentally sharp. According to the state of Arizona, I'm fully licensed to drive until 2027. Those tests don't catch everything. They catch enough. Enough to prove that I'm competent. Enough to prove that your contract is fraudulent. Rebecca reached out. Dad, please. We made mistakes. We should have talked to you first. But we were scared. We lost Mom so suddenly, and the thought of losing you too. It was a good performance. Tears welling in her eyes. Voice catching. I might have believed it if I hadn't read the text messages. Rebecca, I need to show you something. I walked to my desk, picked up a folder, walked back. Last night, I had Martin Chun request copies of Kevin's communications with Shady Pines. As part of the fraud investigation. Kevin's face went pale. What fraud investigation? The one my lawyer filed on Thursday. For the fraudulent contract you signed using my name without authorization. That's not, you can't. I opened the folder, pulled out printed pages. These are emails between Kevin and the admissions director at Shady Pines. Dated over the past 6 weeks. I read aloud. My father is showing signs of cognitive decline. We're concerned about his ability to make sound decisions. We'd like to move quickly before he becomes more resistant. Kevin stood up. Those are private communications. They're evidence. Evidence that you planned this for weeks. Evidence that you lied about my mental state to a care facility. Evidence of fraud. Rebecca was scanning the pages over my shoulder. Her face changed as she read. Kevin, you told me Dad was actually showing signs of decline. You said his doctor was concerned. I said what I needed to say to get you on board. The mask was fully off now. Kevin's face was red, contorted. This is ridiculous. Dad, you're overreacting. I was trying to help. You're 74 years old. You can't live alone forever. Eventually you're going to need care. And you were just positioning yourself to take control of my assets. That's not. I pulled out another document. The one Martin had prepared. This is my new estate plan. Everything I own, the house, the investments, the savings, is now in an irrevocable trust with professional management. Kevin grabbed for the paper. I held it away. After I die, the trust will make charitable donations to causes I care about. Education for underprivileged kids. Veterans organizations. Medical research. What about us? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. You'll each receive the minimum required by Arizona law. Approximately $50,000. Nothing more. You can't do this. Kevin's voice cracked. We're your children. That money is our inheritance. That money is mine. I earned it. I built it. I decide what happens to it. We'll challenge it in court. We'll prove you're incompetent. You'll lose. I have medical documentation proving my competence. I have records of your fraud. I have witnesses to your behavior. Any court challenge will only cost you money you don't have. Rebecca was crying now. Real tears, I thought. Or maybe just better acting. Dad, please. I know we made mistakes. I know Kevin went too far. But we're family. Mom would want us to work this out. I looked at my daughter, my son, the children Dorothy and I had raised, the people they'd become. Your mother would be ashamed of both of you. The words landed like hammers. Rebecca flinched. Even Kevin looked struck. Mom loved you, Rebecca whispered. She'd want you to forgive us. Your mother also taught me to recognize when people are using love as a weapon. She would have seen through this in a heartbeat. She would have protected herself, just like I'm protecting myself now. I walked to the front door, opened it. It's time for you to leave, Dad. Rebecca started. Now. Kevin gathered himself, straightened his designer polo. This isn't over. I'm going to call a lawyer. Good. Give them my attorney's number. Martin Chin. He's expecting your call. They walked to the door, stopped on the threshold. Dad. Rebecca's voice was small. Are we ever going to talk again? I looked at her, Kevin, at the children I'd raised, fed, educated, supported. The children who'd grown into adults who saw me as an obstacle between them and money. That depends entirely on you. When you're ready to treat me with respect instead of as a problem to be managed, you know where I live. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched them stand in my driveway, arguing, blaming, eventually getting into their separate cars and driving away. The house was quiet, peaceful. I made fresh coffee and took it to the back porch. The mountains were beautiful this time of morning. Dorothy would have loved this light. That I sat in my chair and breathed. 3 weeks later, I got a letter from Kevin's lawyer. They were threatening to contest the trust, claiming I was incompetent, claiming undue influence from my attorney. The usual tactics. Martin responded with a counterfiling. My medical records, my cognitive evaluations, the evidence of Kevin's fraud. The emails to Shady Pines. That I also included a notice that I was considering criminal charges for the fraudulent contract. Kevin's lawyer withdrew 2 days later. Rebecca called the following week, apologetic, tearful. She'd done a lot of thinking and realized she'd been wrong to support Kevin's plan. Dad, I know I can't take back what happened, but I want to try to rebuild our relationship. Not for the money, I understand that's gone. Just because you're my father and I miss you. I listened, really listened. Rebecca, I appreciate you saying that, but trust is earned, not declared. If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be built on respect, not obligation. No more conversations about my age, my driving, my living situation. Those are my decisions, not yours. I understand. We can try, slowly. But one sign that you're working with Kevin, one attempt to challenge my decisions, and we're done permanently. I understand, Dad. I really do. We've had coffee twice since then. Careful conversations. Small steps. Kevin hasn't called, hasn't visited. I hear from mutual friends that he's struggling financially. The BMW got repossessed. Linda's talking about divorce. I could feel sorry for him. Maybe someday I will. But not today. 6 months have passed since Kevin told me I was too old to drive. This morning, I drove my truck to the hardware store, picked up supplies for the deck I'm building, stopped for breakfast at my usual diner, where the waitress knows my order by heart. 74. I'm building things with my hands, walking 2 miles every day, playing poker with friends who've known me for decades, living my life on my own terms. My children thought my age made me weak. They saw gray hair and assumed decline. They saw a quiet life and assumed helplessness. They forgot that I built a company from nothing, that I survived recessions and market crashes, that I raised them, educated them, gave them every advantage. They forgot that experience isn't weakness, but it's power. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of your age, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If you've ever had family members try to make decisions about your life without your consent, let me know how you handled it. And if you're younger, let this be a lesson. Respect your elders. Not because we're fragile, because we've survived things you can't imagine. We've earned the right to make our own choices. Don't ever forget that. Like this video if you enjoyed the story. Subscribe if you want to hear more. And share it with someone who needs to be reminded that getting older doesn't mean getting weaker. Until next time, remember, they said I was too old to drive. But I'm the one who drove the story to its ending. And I'm just getting started.